Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is Wednesday, Gratitude Shift Wednesday. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited about today's conversation. It's going to be an integration of Tuesday show, and today, right? So yesterday was Transformational Tuesday. It was a transformational day for me. I got set up, and all of a sudden, I just came down with the bug, and I just could not yeah, my body would not allow me to do anything yesterday. So today is going to be an integration of Transformational Tuesday and Gratitude Shift Wednesday. And here's the thing: the title for today is called "Shrink or Shine." Right, breaking free from the voice that keeps you playing small. Remember, we're talking about rise, right? Rise. And this week is about recognizing and becoming inspired, right? So we recognize what is stopping us from overcoming, from really rising, from really elevating to this new mindset. And then we get inspired, okay? All right. So on Transformational Tuesday, that focus was about really exploring how your emotional reactions like fear, guilt, and shame, right? And really not labeling those as flaws, but really more as flags, right? So we're really introducing this new concept of our triggers more as flags, right? Pointing to these internal limiting beliefs. And then today, we're talking about these obstacles, right? These obstacles that really take our focus away, right? And I want you to know that obstacles really reveal how these flags, right? Those flags, those triggers, right? How they silently shape the limits, right? Silently shape our limitations in our self worth, in how we move forward. Okay. All right. And I think that this is going to be perfect merge um, of two sessions into one because one triggers is really about managing what our emotions, right? Our emotional messages. And then obstacles are like the consequences of those emotional messages, right? So we have a trigger so the pattern that we're looking for today is like trigger, react, the cycle, and then the obstacle. Okay. And here's how this works. I guess it's like, what do you feel? What is that trying to reveal? Right. And then what is that costing you? Why am I doing this session? Why am I even doing the Rise series? Why am I doing today's session and really merging these two? It's because too many powerful people, like I say, we're powerful beyond measure, but we shrink in moments that were really created for us to rise, you guys. Not because we lack the skills a lot of times, but because it's sometimes because our old stories, right? Our old stories keep telling us that we're not enough, all right? That we need more, that something needs to happen, all right? So this session is truly about exposing, right, the false voices, really tracing it back to the origin and really choosing a new story, all right? Because it's not just fear, you guys. It's not just fear, it's familiarity. All right, it's familiarity, and familiarity will have you playing small in a life that was really designed for you to expand. Listen, this thing called life is a truly um it can be challenging. This whole rise, recognizing being coming inspired, right? Showing our strengths, and then the E I want to say is becoming empowered, right? This this mechanism is truly this ability to rise or just elevate or just shift your mindset. It is a daily appetite. It is a daily appetite. Good morning, Mariah. And I feel like that's what the work is because when we're turned off, right? It's just easy to go hide. It's easy to not show up. But is the emotional cost to that easy, right? And that's what we're talking about on Wednesday. Truly, the emotional cost, right, of not rising to the occasion, of not really showing up, that a lot of us carry, right? That a lot of our parents carry, that a lot of our friends, carried because we just had a fear, right, that was triggered of showing up. All right, so today's disclaimer is this is not about a quick confidence hack or anything like that. This is about really deep emotional honesty. All right. if you ever dimmed your light to really avoid being too much, right? Or you dimmed your light because you didn't know and it was kind of like embarrassing for you to say, like, hey, I need help with that, right? If you hesitated, all right, if you avoided being too much, if you hesitated, not because you couldn't, but because you had a fear of judgment or rejected, right? This is your moment. This is your session. Okay. So if you are ready to rewrite your worth, listen, Project Life is here. I want you to know that because action, right? Action is required after you get the information. All right. So I just want to say good morning. Good morning. It is gratitude shift Wednesday. Gratitude shift Wednesday, you guys. And I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons with Dr. Sheila Little. I'm Dr. Sheila Little. If you're new here, right, this is your space, right, to really slow down, to reflect, to get present. And in this series, it's to rise, right? So today is all about worth. Okay, so it's like Wednesday worth. It's all about speaking to this thing called worth, and whether you've been questioning your worth or defending or defending it in silence. Okay, this is your permission to really lay down your armor, you guys, and really just step into the thing that um that it's like your birthright, okay? But before we do that, I want you guys to drop a word in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling this morning. And if you want to challenge yourself this morning, then drop a word in chat or just, write, grab a piece of paper and write down a word that describes you, I guess a word that describes how you show up or how you respond to fears, when they show up. All right. Do you freeze? Do you fight? Do you overwork or do you retreat? Right? Do you fight, fight, freeze, or fawn when fears show up? If you really want to challenge yourself, get you a piece of paper and say, hey, when fears show up, how do I typically respond to that? Some people will freeze, right? Some people will fight, defend, protect, right? Some people will overwork, all right, or retreat. Or what do you do? So when fears show up for me, I think that I'm looking um for the polar opposite, right? I'm looking for the opportunity. Like I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. I feel this thing about to happen. Maybe things that aren't going as planned. And my prayer is, okay, show me the opportunity. Where is the opportunity? Where is the thing that I can leverage? Even if it's a slither of light, people know I always talk about this slither of light. Even if it's just a slither of opportunity, let me see that so I can leverage that. Okay. And so sometimes it's just stepping out my comfort zone. Sometimes it's yeah, just a challenge to strengthen me. Sometimes it's just to expose areas and something like that. And so I'm really looking for this slither of light. So I think that I've become very, if I had to drop one word in the chat that describes how do I respond when fear show up, yeah, I think I get still. Like very like, okay, I get very meditative. Like I could be watching the TV or the TV is on and I would watch something that watched before so that I can listen to my thoughts. So something is happening in the background, but I'm really just kind of in a meditative state. So what's one word for you? And as you're getting that word, let's get present in our body. Okay, so let's feel our feet on the floor. Okay, feet on the floor. All right, up our legs, charging our bones this morning, right? We have all of these bones in our body. I think the bones are so important because when you go to get any type of scan or something, right, they're so dense, right, that you're going to see these bones. So let's kind of focus on that today. And then the tissue that is attached to our bones, so up our legs, right, our thighs, our butt, our tailbone, okay, our spine, right, the ribs that really encompass our organs, all right, up our neck, our shoulder blades, okay, feeling that bone, right, down our arms, our elbows, our forearms, our fingers, all of these digits, what is that called? Yeah. Those, right, activating our hands so we can do what we were what we always wanted to do today. Let's activate that up our head, our skeleton. Okay, right? The jawbone, right? The face bone, right? Our forehead, right? And then the skull that really protects, right? And so our bones are there to protect us. So as we breathe in on this morning, let's breathe in protection and just breathe out fear. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Who is this session for? Who is this session for? This session is for you. If you keep shrinking in rooms where you were qualified to lead, all right? This session is for you if you hesitate to speak up when your soul says go, or when your spirit says go, or your gut says go, but you're like, all right. If you questioned your worth if you questioned your worth more than your capacity, all right. If you questioned your worth more than your capacity, and then if you're tired of building on confidence, if you're tired of building on confidence that collapse at every no, all right. So you're tired of building on confidence that collapse every time you get rejected, right? So you're confident, confident, confident until the rejection comes. And then once the rejection happens, it's like you're defeated. All right. It's so interesting about this thing of defeat, because I think it's a sneaky little joker, right? It's this little thing that makes us feel like we have to argue our point. We have to defend ourselves, right? And it's this very silent little thing because you don't want to feel defeated. Um, so Miss Mariah said, I think there's series if words that describe what I feel. My first name. Okay, retreat. Okay, so she said that the word that describes how she feels when their spirit is retreat. Thank you for sharing, Mariah. All right. So I was talking about this defeat, right? And it's a sneaky little feeling because it's like I feel like I have to defend myself. Sometimes it's that feeling like, okay, you won, right? I'm really trying to protect myself. And it's this feeling of not wanting to be defeated. Okay. So again, if you're building on confidence that collapse every time you get rejected, it can sometimes be this fear of what? Feeling defeat. All right, feeling defeat. All right. Listen, I want you to know that you are, as I'm putting my earrings on, that you are that you're high functioning people. We are highly functional people. Even in survival, I think that we're very savvy and sophisticated and we know how to maneuver. Okay. It's just sometimes that we're not aware of that. All right. And the not being aware of that can sometimes make us exhausted by the repeating the same emotional reaction that you can't name or you often feel like you can't change. Right. So, what this lesson is here to really give you is language, one, right? Language so that you can finally name what is happening. Okay. I think language is so powerful because it's like, I don't know, it connects the dots. Okay. Number two, permission. Right. So number one, these lessons is going to this series is going to give you language. Number two, permission. Permission to stop blaming yourself. Right, and start to really have compassion and understanding and love for yourself. And then number three, power. Right, the power to shift your story and really reclaim your growth. All right. So this lesson is language, permission, and power. All right. So today's guiding quote is listen, fear isn't always loud. Okay. It can sound, fear isn't always loud. It can sound like wisdom, but peace doesn't require you to shrink to find safety. All right. So fear isn't always loud and it can sound like wisdom, but peace doesn't require you to shrink to find safety. All right. A lot of us are really shrinking to find this safe space, right? To really, and it's the familiarness. Safety for us is truly familiar. If it's a familiar tone, if it's a familiar feeling, if it's a familiar dis-ease, sometimes the nervous system is like, okay, I know that. And it can release this kind of this kind of feeling where I'm safe. And then the thing that's not familiar, which is in your growth, which is in your transformation, which is stepping into your power, right? the nervous system will perceive that as a threat and make it so much bigger and make it so much scarier. And it's just like it doesn't really have to be that scary, right? It doesn't have to be that way if we can, one, get the language and understand what's going on. Two, give ourselves permission to step into our greatness. And then three, again, just stepping into our power. All right. Listen, I had a client once share that she was afraid to launch her program, not because she didn't believe in it, but um because she didn't believe in herself. Right? She was afraid to launch her program, not because she didn't believe in the program, but because she didn't believe in herself. Another person I worked with delayed her book for like 6 years, you guys, right? And she blamed that on time. But really what was happening or what blocked her was this belief that no one would care about what she had to say, right? The cost of this, the cost that these two ladies had to bear, 6 years of silence, suppressed capacity, and the emotional weight of their unseen story. All right, their unseen goals, that unseen part of them that wants to be manifested. All right. So if I had to ask you this, what have you delayed? Not because of readiness. All right. That's what the captions say. This may not even be about ability or readiness. This could be just about your worth. So, what have you delayed, not because of readiness, but because the belief that you were not worthy, that you were not worthy? All right. And here's our heart check in. I want you to think, what is the most common voice that shows up before you stretch into something new? Like I said, mine is the annihilator. No, I'm finna go into something new because, honey, it is this voice in my head that just gets so loud, and it's just an annihilator. Just like it can make me want to question everything, right? All of those things come up in a point in my life. I kind of get this little grin because I'm like, oh, okay, so it must be finished shift. Okay, listen, I want you to think about who does that voice sound like, all right, and what decisions have you avoided because of this voice, all right? And I want you to ask yourself this: what is it costing you emotionally, relationally, and professionally because you're listening to this narrative or this inner critic that is a sum of all of your fears. To me, it's kind of like what just came up in my spirit. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You remember, it was like this big voice, like, and it was just this little man behind this big voice. And I feel like that's the inner critic, right? It's just like this big voice, and it sounds real and so scary. It's like the boogeyman under your bed or in your closet, like these stories that you believe that just are not true, and they're there to stop you. All right, so your heart check-in today is like, what is the most common voice that shows up when it's time for you to stretch? Now, remember, stretching is not jumping off the edge of the bridge. All right, stretching could be get my health in order. Right, I'm gonna start. Uh, for me, I'm gonna start walking every day. That's a stretch. All right, and what happened? Even when I said that, right? Guess what happened? It's the time that I said I was gonna walk. Something happened. Like, the car didn't start. My son had to get picked up early. Like every day, something happened that actually like fueled the voice. Like, yeah, this may not be a good time. And I'm like, I know it's a good time. I know that this is a great time for me to walk, right? But all of these things are showing up to what? To make me not believe that this is a good time, or to make me fall back into what? My old habits. Because in my body, right? My body feels safe, probably in this uncomfortableness, right? So I feel, even though I'm uncomfortable with my weight, there's a comfortability because I know that. What I don't know is what the 160 or 165 Sheila will show up as. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat. So I don't want you guys to think about this as this big, overwhelming like dream. It's these little small things, right, that uh we give attention to. But these small things, when we start to change them, will actually change the trajectory of our experiences in our life, or just will change our life altogether. All right. So again, why does this matter? Because if we can identify the triggers, right, what makes you small or what makes you shrink, right, in these actions, then we can interrupt them. So if we can identify triggers as ways that show up as mirrors that we can interrupt, then we can, in some way, in a way, take our power back and really start to stretch our capacity. All right. And the reason this is happening is because our subconscious beliefs, usually about safety, worthiness, and visibility, is not being activated when we're allowing this trigger to trigger us. Okay. All right. When we're allowing this trigger to hold us back versus saying, okay, this is a moment for me. This is a moment for me to step into something new. This trigger is here as a mirror, not to interrupt me, right? um, this is here to show me that I have where my capacity is and where I can stretch, right? And I may have some subconscious beliefs, right, about safety, unworthiness, and visibility, right, that this trigger is activating. Okay. All right. Listen, I want you to know that it's not just fear, it's a real rehearsed protector. Remember, that voice is a protector, right? Trained by what? By your trauma, by your upbringing, by your rejection, and by abandonment, right? It says, don't rock the boat. If you shrink, if you shine, right, you will be rejected. If you show up too much, what are they going to say? These are the type of narratives that trigger this response for you to what? To step back into your until what's comfortable. And again, I want to say what's comfortable for you. Maybe I don't know, changing your color palette and your clothes may be something that you want to do. I just don't want you to feel like it's this big thing that I'm talking about. I talk to a lot of people and I work with thousands of people, you guys, who they just want to liberate themselves in very small ways, and it's a big deal for them. It's a big deal to shift their bedroom around or to um make their yard look the way that they want it to look because because of what their mama say or what their husband is going to say, or change their hairstyle because of what somebody is going to say. So when I'm talking about stepping into and rising and elevating your mindset to really align, advance, and accelerate your life, again, I think that so often we focus on the big goals, the going back to college, you know, the income and all of that, and we fail to really look at these small integral things that our daily relationship with ourselves. How we talk to ourselves when we look in the mirror. Maybe it's a goal for one of you to, when you see yourself in the mirror, just to like what you see, right? To be able to, I don't know, leave the lights on when you having sex. I don't know, but it's something very small that's getting in the way that you keep feeding, right? That you keep feeding that is not allowing you to really embrace and grow and really rise. All right, and really rise. All right. So I do want to say that fear, okay, fear patterns aren't flaws, you guys, that they are flags, all right? They're not flaws, they're flags, and they reveal where you need healing. Okay, that person that can't look in the mirror and say, I love you, or you're beautiful, or you're amazing, right? This is not a flaw. This is a flag, right? And it's revealing a part of you that still needs to be healed. Maybe you're uncomfortable with being seen because of something that happened right in your past. All right. All right. So again, they reveal where you need to be healed, not where you need to quit. All right. And I think that all too often when we talk about triggers or obstacles, we see it as the end of the road. This is the sign that's showing me that I should stop and turn around. And it's like, no, no, that's not a sign. That's a sign that say, hey, this is where my healing journey begins. This is where my healing journey begins, right? Because at this point, any point past this, scary for me, right? it's emotional for me. And that makes me emotional because I know I've stepped to that edge so many times, and I've walked with people who have come to this edge so many times. And this is where faith is activated, right? This is where the thing I'm hoping for, I'm believing it so much that I'm going to walk, in a sense, I'm going to step into this unknown space. It's kind of like stepping off, and I give the visual, it's kind of like you're stepping into an abyss, right? Into an abyss, I'm sorry, where there's nothing, you don't see any stone, but as you're stepping, it's as if the foundation is kind of being lifted at the same time that you're stepping. All right. This is very, I don't say it's scary, it's just very vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable feeling. All right. So if you fear, if you if you let fear become your GPS, right, you'll keep rerouting yourself away from your purpose. All right. So if you continue to let fear be your GPS, you'll keep rerouting yourself away from your purpose. Listening, every moment spent doubting your worth is a moment your calling waits in silence. All right. Every moment spent doubting your worth is a moment that your calling waits in silence. Listen, the moment you name, the moment you start to name that voice, you start to name um, that space that needs healing, is the moment that you will take your power back. Listen, I worked with a client that said that the moment she named her voice, right? The moment she, this is how she said it, the moment I named the voice that I told myself that told me I wasn't ready, the moment I named the voice that told me that I wasn't ready, I realized it wasn't even my voice. Okay. It was an old memory running an old memory running my past. Listen, studies have shown that internalized belief from early childhood criticism or rejection, guess what it does? It shapes decision making and confidence. Wow, well up into our adulthood, you guys. So when you recognize and rewire these programs or these thoughts, right? So when you recognize and rewire them, guess what? Confidence becomes a byproduct of your clarity. All right. It becomes a byproduct of your clarity. Okay. All right. So we know that the T, right? The T in stop it is for triggers, and the O is for obstacles. All right. And this today we're talking about both. We're integrating triggers and obstacles together. All right. So this week we explore how um we're exploring how the fears or the patterns, these triggers show up. All right. And then we're challenging the false beliefs, right? That truly is the obstacle when what we're challenging the false beliefs that really keep us from fully stepping into our power. All right. Listen, fear of failure, rejection, and judgment, all of these things can be considered triggers, you guys. And they can create these obstacles of internal shame, perfectionism, and even this thing, this imposter syndrome that a lot of individuals talk about. All right. Here's the thing, the real obstacle is rarely a lack of skill, right? A real obstacle is rarely a lack of skill. It's the belief that you're not allowed to be seen, that you're not allowed to take up space, and that you're not, or that you have to move perfectly, right? That everything has to be perfect before you move. All right. I want to talk about some essential things that really to really help you understand this relationship between triggers and obstacles, right? Especially through the lens of like this inner critic or self worth and fear based behaviors. All right. So, listen, triggers aren't random. All right. Number one, triggers aren't random, they're emotional flashbacks. All right. So, when you're on or when you're about to expand, your nervous system, again, I want you guys to understand your nervous system remembers the last time you felt unsafe, the last time you felt rejected, and the last time that you felt invisible, right? And so that shrinking response isn't weakness, It is a preventative loop, right? That's rooted in your emotional memory. What it makes me think about is a turtle, right? That ducks his head in. Like if you ever had a turtle as a pet, you touch it and it just the knee jerk reaction is for it to what? To duck his head in. Um, Anything like if you think about, remind me of some of those flowers, like when you touch them and they just, I mean, they happen in cartoons, but so I want you to think about your trigger as being that it's a knee jerk reaction, right? So sometimes the shrinking, and this is why we shouldn't, this is why we got have to stop judging it, right? Is that when I shrink, it's as if I'm being pinched or something is happening in my nervous system remembers that, right? And so this is why shrinking is not a weakness. Here's where you come in as the manual rider of the grown full woman or man that you are today. All right. When I notice me shrinking or I notice that knee jerk reaction, that is my opportunity to step into manual mode and to breathe and then to what? To act differently, to move differently, to take my power back. And the more I do that in those moments, right? That little space, right? That space between me, okay, I'm shrinking, I'm feeling defeated, I'm feeling this way, right? The moment that I can recognize that naturally my body is going into protective mode, and I have an opportunity right here to breathe, to stop that, to change that pattern, then I can insert what something new here. All right, something new here. All right. So again, shrinking is not a weakness, you guys, or the shrinking response isn't a weakness. It is a preventative loop rooted in emotional memory. Number two, all right, the voice that stops you, the voice that stops you often isn't your voice. All right. The voice that says, don't speak up, you'll fail, usually is a mirror of a parent, a teacher, a partner, a culture, some type of message that once convinced you that silence is safer. And again, silence is don't say that, don't speak up. It can be in our aesthetics and how we dress, right? It can be in how we choose to wear our makeup, right? So silence is not just in our words, it's in our expression. It can be in our body language, right? So this silence feels safer. All right. The colors we choose to wear. I remember at the beginning of 2025, Coco, and if you guys, she probably still has it up, but she did this 30-day um like design plan. But every day what she did was just basically asked you about like your clothes, like what colors do you like to wear and and what's in your closet. And and she really wanted to get individuals aesthetically like seeing how the colors you wear and the clothes that you put on, how it can activate a different mood in you and how it can really do this. And I went through that 30-day process with her, and she did it on Facebook, and it was very good, um, and it was very eye opening. So again, but a part of that was the silencing, right? Like, are you dressing the way you want to dress? Is there something that you want to wear that you feel like if I wear that, people are going to think this? See, these are the little narratives where we get stuck, right? I remember I've always been a tennis shoe person, always been a tennis shoe person, never been the heel person. And I used to feel like, oh, I need to wear a heel or I need to wear my clothes a certain way. So one, I can appear softer, so I can be in my, ladylikeness. And it was just so uncomfortable for me. And so this was like before people even started to wear tennis shoes or dresses. Like I would go out with my friends and I would have on less like you remember those little white girls? They was just, I think we called them white girls. They was just like regular little shoes, white. You bought them from like Family Dollar or whatever. So I would try to get like just a regular kind of shoe to wear because like I just don't like heels. So often being pulled to shrink from that feeling like I felt empowered in my tennis shoe. I felt, but here was the trigger. Because I was told I was a tomboy, and like forever, like my mom would just be like, you need to dress like a girl. You're a tomboy. And I'm just like, I just don't want that. Like, I want to be feminine. And so I wanted to wear these, um, I wanted to appear feminine. So I would wear these heels. But that was so uncomfortable for me. To make a long story short, it was like I was silencing the part of me that felt comfortable, right? So in my 30s and 40s, I really started to embrace that. So you see me wear t-shirts. I know a lot of people may think like, she come on, why she don't dress professional? This is the about the most professional you're gonna get from me. You know, a t-shirt, maybe a collar shirt, you know, a tennis shoe, because that is where I'm most comfortable. That is my empowered state. Now I do like a fitted dress, you know. So if I go out, I do like a fitted dress for those type of occasions, but more than likely I'm in a slack and a t-shirt and a tennis shoe, right? That's an empowered state for me. But we're talking about something so small, right? It's dressing, but it's so big and it's so liberating in how I show up in a room, right? Because if I went to a room and I had on a heel, I probably couldn't empower myself to speak because I'm thinking about this heel and how uncomfortable it is. So I want you to think about that. Listen, um, I want you to think about, like, how are you silencing yourself to feel safer? Is it in your clothes? Is it in how you talk? Is it in your body language? Right, and all of those things. All right. Okay. Number three, triggers reveal. Okay, they don't define. All right, triggers reveal. They don't define. Listen, your emotional flashbacks aren't proof that you're not ready. All right. So your emotional flashbacks aren't proof that you're not ready, you guys. It's proof that you're healing, that you are healing. All right. Um, they really show you where the old story still has roots, not where the new journey ends. Okay. They really show you where the old story still has roots, not what and not where the not where the journey ends. And I think that when we're triggered or something, we feel like it's the end of the road. This is evidence that this relationship is for me, this opportunity is for me, isn't for me, whatever that is. No, it's an emotional flashback. And if you don't get present, and here's the thing, you can still make the decision and not move forward. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, are you making the decision to not move forward because of something that happened in the past, right? Because you having this emotional flashback. And so that emotional flashback caused you some pain, some hurt, some rejection, something. And so now you're not going into this door because of what happened the last time you got to the door that looked familiar to this. Does that make sense? That makes sense what I heard in chat, right? If that's the case, then guess what? Yeah, you're allowing the trigger to define how you move forward. What we want to do is want to breathe, right? Take a breath and really make our decisions from this current moment, all right? As much as possible, as much as possible. All right. So again, your emotional triggers reveal, they don't define. So your emotional flashbacks aren't really proof that you're not ready, you guys. They're proof that you're healing. And they show you really where your old story still has roots, not where your journey is ending. All right. Okay. Another thing is that fear disguises itself as wisdom. Again, fear will disguise itself as wisdom. Fear will disguise itself as wisdom. Okay, listen, sometimes fear doesn't shout, okay? It rationalizes. Sometimes fear does not shout, you guys. It will rationalize. Listen, it will ration out some lies, okay? It will ration out some lies. Listen, how does that look? Now isn't the right time. Now isn't the right time. I just need to prep more. I need more information. Um, just any like rational lie, right? Any rational lie, fear will do that. It will rationally lie to you and it will make so much sense. And this is where having an objective person, if it's a coach, if it's a mentor or something like that, to really stretch you, to really get you to ask yourself deeper questions to really reveal, the fear. All right. These aren't always, because here's the thing, those rational lies, they're again, they're not always true, right? Often they're fears, they are fears in a flattering outfit, right? There are fears in like this flattering outfit. They're attractive fears. And guess what? They align with what? With what makes you more comfortable. They align with what makes you more comfortable, right? So remember, fear can disguise itself as wisdom, all right? And I call that a rational lie. It just makes sense. You do need more time to prep, right? And now may not feel like the right time. That's a rational lie. But when is the right time then? Right? And if you have more time to prep, then what would you be prepping? Right? These are what more do you need to do that you feel like you haven't done? And let's talk about that. And how is that going to change, you know, is the thing that you're looking for in the actual action? And this is why it's just so important to get a coach. Okay, listen, your body often, the next thing is your body often shrinks before your mind does. All right. Your body will often shrink before your mind does. Remember, I talked about the turtle ducking his head, right? The turtle ducking his head. Remember, that's a knee jerk reaction. So your body may respond faster or may respond or shrink before your body does. What does this look like? Tight chest, shallow breath. You can feel your body like a closed posture, right? So before you even realize that you're shrinking mentally, right? If you feel your body, right, your body reacting away, then you know that you may be in a shrinking type of disposition, right? So if you like, oh my, feel rejected, like, oh, I can feel my shoulders, kind of slump down, or I could, feel my voice kind of, it has lost its inspiration, right? So these are things like your body often shrinks before your mind does. All right. So again, tight chest, shallow breath, a closed posture. So before you recognize you're shrinking mentally, your body has already reacted. All right. So becoming somatically aware really helps you to interrupt this pattern. All right. This is why this getting present in your body is so important. So you can feel the shifts in your body. So you can be like, oh, how do I feel? Sometimes that's what that breath is, and so then I may sit up, because naturally this conversation feels heavy, or this thing I'm about to say feels heavy and my body is shrinking. But if I'm not aware of my body shrinking, then I'm not even aware that I'm shrinking. All right. All right. So just being present enough in the body. Another thing is internal obstacles create external hesitation. All right. So internal obstacles have the potential to create external hesitations. Listen, you don't miss the opportunity because you're not capable, right? You did not miss the opportunity because you were not capable. You hesitated because you doubted your enoughness. All right. Many doors were never closed. Okay. Many of the doors that you feel like was closed, they were never closed. They were just quietly passed by you. All right. You felt unworthy. You felt a sense of not enoughness, not ready, readiness, right? And so that door never truly closed, right? You just quietly passed it by. You saw an opportunity. Oh, that would be good for me to do. Oh, I would love to do that. Oh, let's say turn it in by Wednesday, apply for that position, do this, do that. And then you just didn't do it. All right. You just didn't do it. And it's not because you wasn't capable. Again, it's because you hesitated because you doubted your enoughness. All right. Listen, I want you to know that unchallenged beliefs quietly build cages. Listen, unchallenged beliefs quietly build cages. The belief, I'm not enough, may not scream. All right. It may not scream at you. So even when I say it, I think that everybody has a sense that, or intellectualize their enoughness, and we'll say like, I'm worthy of this, I'm worthy of this. So I'm blocking this person, or I'm not going to talk to this person because my worth is too valuable. Like we say that, right? But I want you to know that uh the belief I'm not enough, it doesn't really scream at you, right? It whispers in micro decisions, in these micro decisions that you make. right? It's the not applying for the job. It's the not asking for what you want. It's the not showing up, right? It's the blocking instead of actually having the conversation and saying, "Hey, that really hurt my feelings when you said that," right? It's the being willing to get it wrong so that you can get it right. Okay, all right. So we want, or we can say, with our mouth that, I'm enough, I'm worthy. People need to treat me right, and all of that. But it's like, are your decisions aligned with that? You know what I mean? Are you actually advocating for yourself, right? Because advocacy. I need to talk about advocacy. Advocacy is so important, especially when you come from a trauma or any type of feelings of being unsafe. There's this advocacy that you have to, I don't know, in a sense, do for yourself, right? And we can want the things that we want, but even if you think about an advocate, what are they advocating for? They're advocating for policies, they're advocating for things on behalf of what? Of a race, of a population, of issue. I think that the biggest thing that we have to learn how to do is advocate for what we want. All right. And not just accept the no, and then get upset about the no. And then in some way, good morning, cousin Debbie. Um, and not get upset about the no, but see it as a time for me to advocate for what I want. I was talking to a friend, and they were telling me about this opportunity that they wasn't going to be able to get, and very hurt and upset about that. And I'm like, I think this is a good time for you to advocate for yourself. It's a lot of times in relationships where I'm encouraging, my clients to advocate for what you want, right? And it's this fear of, if I start to advocate for the things that I want, if I start to really talk about it, I don't, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I don't want people to think that I think I'm too much. I don't, but it's like, but if you don't advocate for it, if you don't advocate for what you want, then why do you think that somebody else just gonna give it to you? And it's as if, well, they should just give it to me because they love me, or they should treat me like this because they see my potential, or they should just give it to me because they know I want it. And it's like, all of that may be true, but why can't you internalize that and say, I love myself enough that I'm going to advocate for me, because you will advocate for your friend. If your boyfriend done your friend wrong, you'll be on the phone like, "Do you need me to step in?" You will advocate for, if it was a part of your job, you're gonna advocate for your kids. You're gonna advocate for your family members. Again, but why can't you advocate for the things that you want? So I'm gonna move on past that, but I do think I should do a session on a lesson on advocating for yourself, because it's so important. So again, back to this, unchallenged beliefs quietly build cages, right? So the belief that I'm not enough may not be screaming, right? But it whispers in these micro decisions of really not showing up, not applying yourself, right? And not asking for what you want. And again, just not advocating for you, all right? And over time, those whispers really start to shrink or make you shrink in your life. All right. The last couple of ones, all right, you can be a high performer and still be held back. You can be a high performer and still be held back. Listen, many people function at a high level professionally while emotionally operating in deep insecurity. All right. Confidence is in one domain, or confidence in one part of your life doesn't always mean self-worth across the board. Okay. So just because you may be good financially and you have a good job, it doesn't mean that you're not deeply insecure in your personal life. All right. So again, many people are high functioning, okay, high level professionally, may have a good job. You may see them driving a good car, nice car, may live in a good house, may perceive have a good relationship, and all of that. And they're still operating from deep insecurities, you guys. Again, confidence. in one domain of your life, meaning you are being competent in one domain of your life, does not always mean that you have self worth across the board. Okay. I want you to know that triggers predict growth. All right. So something triggers you, if something triggers you, it's likely pointing toward the edge of a new level. All right. If something is triggering you, remember, I say a trigger is you've come to an end of, as you think about grass and concrete. All right. You are used to being in the grass. The trigger, as soon as you step in the concrete, that new texture, that new kind of feeling, that's the trigger. Wait, this is something different, right? And typically, when we step onto the concrete, we feel a different type of foundation, something change in our mind will make us step back into the grass, into what's comfortable. And that's not what the trigger is there for. The trigger is there to say, hey, you're stepping into concrete now. We may need to change how we show up, how we communicate, just become more aware. And that's where the therapists come in and that's where a coach come in to really help you navigate that. Listen, the more you resist triggers, the more you delay your breakthrough. All right. The more you resist stepping onto the concrete. Every time you step onto the concrete, like, oh, I just can't. I just listen. The more you delay the breakthrough that you um, so desire and really so deserve. All right. Listen, worthiness is the real work. This is the last one. Worthiness is the real work. So at the root of most hesitation isn't strategy, you guys. It's self concept. So when you believe you aren't worthy of the room to grow, if you believe that you're not worthy of the rate of the relationship, right, you will stop negotiating, right? You will stop negotiating your presence. Listen, when you believe you're worthy, I'm sorry, when you believe that you're worthy of the room, of the rate, of the relationship, you will stop negotiating your presence. All right. What does that mean? Again, hesitation. So most hesitation isn't strategy. It is a self-concept. It is what I believe about me. All right. And when I start to believe that I'm worthy of the room, the space, right, of the rate of the financially or the standard, right, of the relationship, I will stop negotiating. I will stop negotiating. I'll start standing in that in who I am. All right. And again, me standing in it that does not require you to stand in it. And I think that's another thing that we get twisted, like me knowing my worth and value, it doesn't require you to know my worth and value. I don't need you to know my worth and value for me to know my worth and value. I can stand in it. And then that's when I can just walk away. you know, that's when I can just say, okay, well, we can talk later. Okay, I see this, that's where we can start creating standards of what conversations we're going to have, what type of exchanges we're going to have. This is when this starts because I don't need you to see my worth. I know it, right? And so some of us are getting so entangled and so judgmental of other people and so in such conflict with people because we're requiring them to see our worth and know our value. And it's like that's not their job. But I guarantee if you see it enough, if they were a person that was meant to see it, they gonna see it. Okay. If they was a person that never meant to see it, I don't care how much you talk about it to them, they just not gonna see it. Okay. It's your job and your responsibility to see your worth, understand your capacity to grow, to heal, and do all of those things. And we have to stop making it a requirement of other people to do some of the things for ourselves that some of the things for us that we're not even willing to do for ourselves. I want you to talk to me a certain way, but then in my mind, I talk to myself like I ain't that's chicken honey iced tea. You know, I want you to value me and do all of these things, but I haven't come to the point where I'm doing that myself, and I just think that we need to start being more self led, right, and leading from the inside. All right, that makes sense. Put a heart in the chat for me. Let's get to our biblical wisdom. We got 6 minutes. 6 minutes. So let's get through our biblical wisdom. John 8:32. Again, this is going to be our scripture probably for the remainder of this week. I think I'm going to start to really do a scripture a week and kind of look at it from different spaces. That's what I'm testing this week. So again, then you will know the truth, and the truth still set you free. All right. Your freedom doesn't start with action, you guys. It starts with alignment. Okay. You are not bound by a story that was never yours to carry. All right. So then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Listen, this verse isn't about intellectual truth, it's about your identity truth. All right. The truth that sets us free is often the truth we forget about ourselves. All right. The ones that was buried under fear, under shame, and under someone else's opinion. All right. So how this session ties into this scripture is because triggers show up when we move towards our freedom, right? Which is our truth. Old patterns and false beliefs are lies that we've accepted as true. All right. And when you recognize the false stories and start to name your real value, you're no longer, stuck, you guys. You actually taking your power back. It's actually like a sovereign, a sovereign behavior. Now, mind you, this was our verse on Monday, right? The truth will set you free. And when I got through with the session, I do this thing where I listen. So I read over my session, and then I go do the life lesson, and then I listen to the life lesson, from the viewer's perspective. And as I'm listening, what come up in my spirit is so we have what's true and we have truth. All right. And I think I've talked about this before, and I heard Myron Goldman say this. So you have what's true and what in truth. All right. So truth. This says, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Okay. So truth is those universal laws. Okay. Truth is the gravity. Truth is the creator, right? The how the creed. So you're beautifully and wonderfully made, right? So these are truths, right? How do we know it's true? Because they're spiritual facts, right? They're the creator and the intention of creation, right? So this is true. And a lot of times we're struggling between what's true for us and what's the truth. All right. So when we talk about what's true for you, when we talk about what's true for you, all right, we're talking about those are the old lies. All right. So again, at one point in your life, that was true for you. Okay. You needed to protect yourself. Remember that your inner critic is the protection, protecting you from getting hurt. So it was true that you felt that pain. That was true, but you no longer feel that pain today. It's like, um, I remember when I jumped off a tree, I had this scar on my knee, and it's like was a nail on the tree. And because I was kind of I went to jump, and the nail, went into. I know it's just I had to give it graphically. All right, now what was true when that happened was that was painful and excruciating. Okay, that pain is not true for me today. Okay. It's not true for me today. I can talk about that experience and I could think about the pain. And what's coming up in my spirit too is like pregnancy, right? So the excruciating feeling of bearing a child. You remember that pain, but you don't feel that pain today. It's like in your mind, you're like, I just know that it was just so painful. I had to ask for an epidural. It's something about it that you forget, right? So, so at the time that was true, and it's no longer true anymore. And I want you to think about that when you start to think about the truth that's going to set you free. A lot of us are holding on to beliefs that may have been true. Okay. Um, and it may have been patterns that, yeah, you definitely just um, demonstrated that, that probably happened and that was true back then, but it's not true. It's not true for you now. And here's the truth that was back then here that even back then you were worthy of love, you were worthy of forgiveness, you were worthy of understanding and compassion. Today, you are still worthy of love. You're worthy of protection. You're worthy of compassion. See, that's the truth, right? Now, you may not have gotten it then, and you may, not be getting it now, but it doesn't stop it from being truth, all right? And when we start to step into our truth, that we are worthy, that we are capable, that we are um, Good morning, brother. That we are powerful beyond measure. When we start to step into this truth, all right, that has nothing to do with intellectual truth, but the truth of your identity, right? That truth sets us free. All right. And often it's the truth that we have forgot about within ourselves. All right. The ones that were buried because of the fear, because of the shame of somebody else's opinions. All right. Right. So yeah, so the truth that sets you free is not just about God, you guys. It's really about remembering what God has placed in you. All right. When you speak that truth, fear has no power. All right. When you speak that truth, fear has no power. All right. Our promise verse is I praise you because you are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? So this includes all your flaws, all your fears, all your fights, right? So this includes your flaws, fears, fights to believe in yourself, right? This isn't just an affirmation, you guys. It's an identity. Uh, it's reclaiming your identity. Again, Psalms 139:14. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Listen, this verse is a mirror. It reflects how divine design isn't something you earn. It's not something that you earn. It is something you embody, you guys, and you were made inward. All right. You were made inward. You don't work your way to value. You wake up with it. All right. You wake up with the value. All right. So, how does this tie in? The inner critic or your old stories will try to get you to believe that you're not enough or you're not worthy enough or you're not good enough. Listen, but this verse affirms that you are already enough. You're wonderfully made. All right. So, from the time you open your eyes in the morning to the time you open your eyes again the next day, you were wonderfully made. All right. Knowing that you are fearfully and wonderfully made is the antidote. Okay. It's the antidote to these internal obstacles. All right. So every time you start to feel unworthy, remember, worth is not performance based, you guys. It is identity based. All right. It's not in what you do, it's in who you are. All right. It's in who you are. All right. So your existence was a divine decision. All right. So when we combine um, these two one sessions in these verses, we know that triggers are the moments where old lies feel true. Okay. And then obstacles are often rooted in the misbelief that you have to earn, right, what you were born with. You don't have to earn it. You were born with it. All right. So these scriptures you that, uh, remind you of the truth that isn't these scriptures remind you that truth isn't something you have to chase, you guys. It's something that you just have to reclaim. All right. So these scriptures work beautifully together for this life lesson because they remind us that you're always been enough, that you have always been enough, and that your belief just needs to catch up with what your divine self already knows, and that you are allowed to replace the script of fear, right? That's the script of fear, that fear writes about you. You are allowed to replace that with the truth that God's placed inside of you. All right. You are allowed to replace that with the truth that God placed inside of you. All right. So how do we put this into action this morning? If that makes sense, put a five in the chat for me. All right. How do we replace that? I mean, how do we put that into action? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to identify one fear-based thought. All right. One fear-based thought um that you hear when you're about to grow. And then we want to write a truth-based response. And then we want to say it out loud and move it or move in that truth on today. All right. You're going to say it out loud and move in that truth on today. And then if you wanted to journal because you're a journaler, here's your journal prompt for today. What truth do I want to believe even if I don't feel it yet? What truth do I want to believe even if I don't feel it yet? Oh, what just came up in my spirit is that this 30 pounds is 10 come off of me. That's- All right. Affirmation. Listen, I am not the voice that told me to shrink, right? I'm the voice that rises. I'm not the voice that told me to shrink. I'm the voice that rises. And then our daily intention for today. Listen, today I'll move as if I already know I'm worthy. Listen, today I'm gonna move as if I already know that I'm worthy. And then our bonus challenge. Listen, the next time you feel the urge to shrink, okay, to pause, I want you to pause. The next time you feel the need to shrink, I want you to pause and I want you to choose visibility instead. Right? Speak, show up, lead. Right? Speak, show up, and lead. And then we also always know that there's going to be a call, a challenge, and a charge. Right? So your call today is like, what voice are you replacing today? You know, what voice are you replacing today? And then number two, the challenge that I'm going to challenge you with today is say the truth out loud, right? Even if your fear is still whispering, you know, move with the fear. And then the charge for you today is to stop shrinking to fit old patterns, right? You are safe to expand. You are safe to expand. Listen, if today resonated with you and you're waiting or you're walking away with some insight today, you already know what to do. Drop a fire in the chat. Drop a fire in the chat and let's celebrate our growth, you guys. Yep. Let's celebrate our growth together. Remember, if you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. Listen, I'll see you tomorrow as we talk about those patterns, how to break those patterns so that we can start to rise. Okay, so we can start to rise, recognize, and be inspired this week. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. With that, like, listen, later.